Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, I do consider myself incredibly lucky at the moment because we have over 60 interviews booked in and currently have, I think, 16 scheduled for release that are edited and ready to go. So let me tell you, they're all killer and no filler. So many great stories I get to listen to and share with you all. And today, I wanted to learn more about integrating cutting-edge technologies into more human-centered solutions. As you all know, the big motto of the show is technology works best when it brings people together. I do get tired of tech-only solutions, so making them more human-centered is right in my ballpark. So I've invited Elisabeth Bohlmann from December Labs onto the podcast today. And for those of you that don't know, Elisabeth is a VP of Client Strategy at December Labs, a high-touch design and development firm for mobile and web products that are all on the front line of innovation. But Elisabeth herself, she drives December Labs' expansion strategy and accompanies up-and-coming startups and enterprise companies towards scalable and continuous growth, making her a sought-out speaker for key industry events such as CES and Austin Startup Week, to the top 100 tech entrepreneur and product podcasts. And with over a decade of leadership background in tech, digital marketing and international operations, she also has a degree in economics from Bonn University in Germany, a Scrum-trained trilingual, cross-functional marketing executive with a passion for design thinking. And if you think that is impressive, she's also developed and led products for iconic brands such as Mattel, NBC Universal, Food Network, and the NBA. And when not commuting from 3 continents, she somehow finds the time to play 10 instruments. Man, suddenly I feel quite inadequate. Buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Latin America, where Elisabeth is waiting to speak with us. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Elisabeth. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Well, hi, Neil. First of all, thanks a lot for having me. I'm really excited, to be able to chat a little bit with you about design, technology, a lot of exciting things that are going on. But about me, I am the VP of Client Strategy at December Labs. And the more technical definition would maybe be, we are a design and development company, offer services from UX UI design to mobile and web development. But I actually like to look at it more as, that we are a partner really for up-and-coming tech startups, established tech companies, and also enterprise companies from Google to Accenture. And we really enable founders, entrepreneurs, CTOs to build amazing and exciting products. And that's, I think, what is really exciting about technology today.
Well, I'm really looking forward to diving into design technology with you and finding more about that and the kind of problems that you're solving there. But before we do, a question I always like to begin with is ask, can you share your origin story, where your passion and love for design and tech came from, how those worlds collided, and ultimately what put you on this path you're on today?
Yeah, sure. And what I actually like about that question is that in my case, as in many others, I think it was not really a gradual path. It was not that I, grew up knowing that I wanted to work in tech. It really, just was always one thing leading to the other. But maybe just, quick background. I am German. I grew up on a small island in the North Sea, so actually not too far away from you. And I actually have a master degree of economics from Bonn University in Germany, and that's kind of where I started out with. But I was never the type of economist that was going to work in finance and just with the numbers. I always liked a kind of a side part of economics, which is called behavioral economics, and which focuses more on actual human behavior within those economic models. And that is actually not that unrelated to marketing, which is where I then actually started to work in, because of course marketing is really the essence of putting the consumer first at everything that you do. So then fast forward, I did in the meantime relocate from Germany to South America, actually. And after a few years was leading regional operations for a digital marketing agency with a basis out of Miami. And had really, the amazing experience of working with many, many iconic brands from Food Network to the NBA, also a lot in the music industry, from Sony Music, Universal, Warner, you name it. But while I really enjoyed, this path that I had taken, I did feel that I wasn't really building something that substantial. I mean, in marketing, you are building brands, which is exciting, of course. But yeah, I had always kind of, been flirting with technology, and we did have, some tech projects or products that we worked with, but it was really just kind of a side area of what we're doing. And I did then a few years back get the possibility and opportunity to actually shift into the tech world and working in software development. And what I really like about it is that with this really weird path of prior experience that I have, I think I can really relate a lot to people that come and talk to us about their tech products, and that also might not have a fully technical background. So I think it just makes it a lot easier for me to emphasize with these people, but also just kind of evangelize always about how you don't have to be a coder to work in tech today.
What a fantastic story. I covered some miles as well from Germany to South America. Absolutely love that. Know. And I would say after 1,800 interviews on here, I would say most stories don't begin with, I'm going to be the next big thing in tech. It's always a series of happy accidents, and almost like the universe gives everyone a slight nudge in the direction to make sure they're where they need to be, when they need to be there. It's fascinating, isn't it, how it all pans out?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting. And also, I personally, for example, talk also a lot, about women in tech and how there are so many different opportunities, that women, I think, oftentimes aren't even really aware of. So if you just, I think, kind of start to think about what all the opportunities are, that are still to come also in the years and decades to come. I think it's great that there is today such a big space for people with all kinds of different backgrounds in tech.
Love that. And I invited you on the podcast today to explore design technology. And to begin with, a question I want to ask is, how do you think UX research and design thinking drive technology? Because on this podcast, I always try and get people thinking about areas that they don't automatically associate with technology. And this is one of those areas, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And it's I can only say, fortunately, today, design thinking and UX research and UI design are a big part of technology. Because if we all recall a little bit about how things looked like in the 90s, when we searched the World Wide Web, it wasn't really that good of a user experience, not really that pretty, not really that user-centric and focused. The funny thing is that design thinking has actually been around since, I think, the 1960s or so. And it's really a type of, mindset and methodology that focuses on understanding a user's problem first before you actually design a product. And it has been used in architecture, in education, in so many different fields. But really in tech, it's still relatively new. But it's so fundamental, again, to always put a user at the center of everything that you build, especially in tech. Then you also mentioned UX, and UX is actually, it's short for user experience. And alongside user interface, it's one of the key parts of design thinking. I mean, oftentimes, when you look at designer positions, you always see UX UI designer. But what does that actually mean? UI design, I think, is what you would typically think about when you just consider design. It's, the visuals, it's the color palettes, it's kind of the final product. But UX is where it gets really interesting, because it's really building out the backbone of a product, and that starts with understanding a user, determining what kind of problem that user has, and how, with your tech product in this case, you're going to solve it. And part of this more almost scientific approach within design thinking when it comes to UX is, test and validate products, iterate, over any kind of testing instances, and really make sure that you are building something competitive. Because if you today build a mobile app, for example, your mobile app will be on a user's cell phone right next to Instagram, to WhatsApp, to Netflix, to any kind of apps that companies have really invested millions of dollars in oftentimes. And so, you just really have to make sure that the user is at the center of what you do. And so, kudos to UX research and design thinking being a part of technology today.
And you did say that the early days of the web wasn't a great user experience, but
No.
be honest, do you still remember or even miss the sound of a 56K modem connecting?
No, not really.
It must be me then. But here in 2021, there is a rise in non-technical founders right now, which I think is fantastic, and it really adds to the diversity of thought in the industry. But what advice would you offer to someone listening that has that next big idea, but they're struggling to find a developer that they can trust and is not going to run away with that idea and bring their vision to life?
Yeah, it's actually hard sometimes for especially for non-technical founders to get started in this journey of building a product. And maybe to make it short, I would say on the one hand, make sure that you have a unique value proposition when it comes to your product. Do your research and make sure that what you're trying to build has a unique sense for a certain user group. Number two, I would, and that's really related to what we were just talking about, validate your idea. That's really what UX research is for. And there are so many great tools today that help you validate anything from, the menu of your website to, how you structure anything. There are so many different tools out there, really. But make sure that you validate that initial idea that you want to bring to market. Also, and that's just, on a side note, UX research doesn't have to be very expensive. I'm saying this because oftentimes we get this question, when we talk to entrepreneurs, hey, but I really don't have the budget to conduct a huge user study and bring them all into a room. And the good thing is, it doesn't have to be very expensive. There are actually studies that say that by just speaking to at least 5 people within a specific user segment that you want to target, you'll probably be able to get an idea of about 80% of the problems that they will have or might have with your product. So you don't have to think super big. It's really something very, very simple to leverage. And the third one, and this is really going into the development side of it and finding the right development partner. You probably won't be able to get all of the things that you want in the same partner, meaning it won't be, cheap and great and fast and everything all together. There's, you have to really set your priorities straight. Is it that you just want to validate something very simple in the beginning and your budget is really low and you don't really care about the quality too much because it's just something, you want to look at yourself? That's one way of looking at it. Is time zone important for you because you do know that this is kind of a longer project and you want to be able to have meetings with your team at the same time? I'm saying this because there are developers and development companies all over the world. This is really a global vertical. So there are many different options there to look at. And then, are you looking to working with someone with a specialization already in that field that you have? Because prior experience might make it a lot easier to build your product. Have you looked at reviews? Are you looking more for a freelancer or for a development company? Really get your priorities straight, look at all these different options and put a value to them so that you really get the best mix possible within those possibilities.
Love that. And one of the reasons I record this podcast every single day is to try and cover as many voices outside of Silicon Valley and get somebody on from a different part of the world every day, especially wherever's possible, that is. But can you tell me a little bit more about why Latin America is actually the perfect location to power a US startup growth?
Yeah, that's also a great question, actually. And I have to say that before I came to Latin America, I wasn't really aware of its role as a tech hub. In general, but I mean, on the one hand, there are a couple of no-brainers maybe for a US startup. If you think about outsourcing, outside the US, you have Canada and you have Latin America within your same time zone. I mean, that's it. Although there are other development companies worldwide, I mean, really the ones where you can work within the same time zones are these, and Latin America typically is a little bit more attractive cost-wise. But really beyond that, I have to say that, for example, in our case, we don't just work with Silicon Valley startups, but also with many other, tech startup within the United States that might be based out of Texas, out of Denver, out of New York. And really what we see a lot is that there is a scarcity of really good and solid tech talent. And that is really where Latin America has stepped up its game in really the last decade or so, and where really, many startups today rely on this type of talent. But going then a little bit more specifically into Uruguay, because this is where we, of course, at December Labs have our main operations at. I find it fascinating how Uruguay, which is such a small country, really is leading so many different rankings as far as stability index within Latin America, but also the number of really tech talent per capita. Uruguay is really kind of a very special place in the sense, and it's also one of the most stable company when it comes to economics, to government, and even natural disasters. I mean, I have to say that in the US, for example, you have your tornado seasons, you have your wildfire seasons. In Uruguay, typically everything kind of stays the same, so that's really a safe place to do business with. But last but not least, there have been very strong efforts educational wise to push tech and tech talent really for a long time now. And again, that results in a really high level of seniority and also dedication when it comes to anything tech related. So while we also do have offices actually in Houston, Texas, and are and do have a couple of developers also in Argentina and Colombia, Uruguay has really been a very special place, and I know that many US startups have been able to grow thanks to Uruguayan developers actually.
And the wearable ecosystem is another area that really seems to be thriving at the moment. And I'm curious, is there anything about the role of mobile applications for wearables and smart devices that particularly excites you or stand out at the moment as someone right in the heart of this space?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe to categorize this, I mean, when you think about mobile apps, you have apps that are meant for social networking, for productivity, for ride sharing, you name it. And mobile apps for wearables or smart devices is a specific category where basically, the mobile app is a companion for a smart device. What is very interesting about this, within the wearable ecosystem, is that you have there, of course, the product, which is the hardware with firmware embedded, and then you have the software on the mobile app side. And really, the entire ecosystem is only as strong as its weakest link, making the mobile app fundamentally important, also in comparison to the actual product. And let me give you a couple of examples there. On the one hand, if, for example, the mobile app doesn't work well and gets bad reviews, then that's probably going to be one of the results that will pop up when you are searching for a product. Let's say you're searching Fitbit, and let's say that users haven't been happy with the app. You're probably going to, get across some of those reviews. So it can, a bad experience on the mobile side can actually affect a purchase decision even, prior to using the app. Another thing that's very important is that these kind of companion mobile apps for smart devices typically take care of the onboarding, meaning, account creation, connecting the app to the smart device, to the wearable. And again, if that doesn't work flawless, then you haven't even used the product yet and might already be frustrated. And it does actually happen a lot more than you might think, even with other types of smart devices. So for us that we work a lot in this space, there is a big responsibility when we work in mobile app development for wearables, because we are the ones that can, really make a product better. But there's also, again, a high level of responsibility there from on our end. So when we have clients within the wearable space that approach us, there is a different type of things to consider when it comes to timeline, when it comes to the firmware, to really getting all the teams to the same table. That is really exciting. I personally love using wearables, smart devices, gadgets. I'm really, really big on that, and so I can really talk about it from a user perspective. But I also know that there's a lot of education always to be done, especially again when we are talking about non-technical founders in the space.
And another trend that we're all seeing, I think, at the moment all around the world is that more proactive approach to healthcare, and people are continuously monitoring their heart rate, steps, calories, exercise, and the list goes on and on. So how do you see digital health evolving in a post-pandemic world?
That's actually almost related to what we were just talking about regarding the wearables, because one of the areas that I think has been super interesting to see during the pandemic and now in the post-pandemic is that people are, of course, a lot more conscious about their own health and are using technology and, for example, wearables to track their own health, to be more informed. And this is just amazing, like just what we have seen going on in this space. One of the companies that we work with is called BioStrap. It's kind of a prosumer wearable within the Fitbit space, and they have done studies now about anything from early detection of COVID through biometric data, that's being read by their devices, up to helping people during the recovery process of COVID. So again, I think just the democratization of knowledge about your own body functions, has just been through the roof now within the last year. But when we think about digital health, it really doesn't stop there. You also have a lot more, mental health offerings, which again have been super important during the last years. And this automatically connects to more telehealth possibilities. Anything from, physicians being able to monitor your health, when you're at your home, or being able to offer consultation that's remote. These are all things that were already there before the pandemic, but they have just been accelerated to a totally different level. And I think in the end, it just makes health so much more accessible to people. And that's kind of the long-term effect that I hope we'll be continuing to see.
So as someone who has this passion for design thinking and integrating cutting-edge technologies into human-centered and value-driven solutions, what are the biggest mistakes that you see people and businesses making out there? Because I suspect that there's more than a few that might frustrate you.
It's on the one hand, I would say that although people make mistakes, don't get frustrated. There are always ways out of any pitfall. So, don't worry too much about it. But there are, I would say, 3 or 4 points, that I regularly see. Number one, companies not validating really their product before they go into the development. And that is really related to what we talked about earlier when it comes to UX research and design thinking. There are so many tools, again, at your disposition today, and really make sure that you are onto something, because just because you might find that your new idea for an app or for a website or whatever is really something that you would use, make sure that you really, think about if you are solving a unique problem. One of the things that we see a lot is that we get sometimes clients or potential clients with almost the same ideas. So on the one hand, that might mean that they're onto something, but then also, that in the end, not all of them, of course, are going to make it because they're very similar. So again, really, first of all, validate your product and your idea. Secondly, I would say don't just validate the product, but also the specific features, because there are many different ways of solving, let's say you have identified that unique user problem that you want to solve for. There are probably more than one way to do this. So also validate those different features. And again, UX research is a great way to do that. And then thirdly, really don't underestimate the development effort that it takes to build a tech product. This can start with making a decision about this being a mobile solution versus web or hybrid. When we go back to the wearables and smart devices, don't underestimate the combination of hardware plus software and all of that. Really, the core, I think, is to find a partner when it comes to development that can guide you through that process, and that will not just do what you're asking them to do. We oftentimes, get clients that say, hey, we want to do A, and we analyze the problem and say, hey, but you might want to do B because of, these or these reasons. And sometimes that means that they won't go with us as far as, solving their problem and building their product, but at least we make sure that they build the right one. And so that, I think, is super important. And the last one is really, if tech startups or entrepreneurs don't put a user at the core of what they want to do, then probably their product is going to fail, because if no one uses it, then you're really not building the right thing.
Love that. And it has been a difficult year for many people listening all over the world, and I think we've all been impacted by it in some shape or form. But what excites you about the future and the positive role that tech is going to play in that future? Is there anything you can share on that?
I think if there's one thing that the last year and the pandemic has shown us, is that everything can change so quickly, and that tech is typically a very big part of all of that. Tech helps us to stay more connected. It has helped many people when it came to working remotely. And there has really been so much innovation going on that I think it's really just a great place to be and to be working at. I do have to say that, on the other hand, just to give you an example, we have just here recently been able to go more to live shows again, and of course everything is with digital tickets, remote, that you use on your mobile apps. And sometimes I do miss kind of having that concert ticket that then you might pin somewhere in your room and just have kind of as a memory there. So I'm sometimes a little bit torn between, on the one hand, being really excited about everything that tech has to offer, and trying to also not lose some of the things that I think make us human as well.
Fantastic. And a question I always like to ask my guests, which is going to be incredibly important to you, because I believe you can play 10 instruments. But before we go there, the question I'm going to ask is, you've shared your origin story, how you've commuted through 3 different continents, but what's been the soundtrack to that origin story and you sitting on those planes and doing those commutes across 3 continents? Is there a particular song that has inspired you or just accompanied you on your journey?
That's a really tough one. I actually do play many, many different instruments and have been doing music all my life. And I think one of the things that is really true to this entire journey is that music is definitely a relaxation tool for me. Meaning that I might be stuck with a difficult problem regarding a specific project, and I will probably always at some point take my guitar and just play around something. When it comes to a specific song, this is like really one of the hardest questions I think anyone has ever asked me, just because, this has been such a big part of my life. But actually, a funny thing, if I think about it, is that whenever I take my guitar, one of the first tunes that I play is Streets of London, because it's one of the first songs that I learned kind of as a finger picking guitar song. And it's just something, like when you tune your guitar, it's always like what I first try out to see how everything sounds. And then on the other hand, maybe if this is of interest, but I also have a band called
Cool.
El Color Ausente, I think just using music as on the one hand a side project, but also really a relief of something, sometimes getting a little bit outside of the tech world, has definitely been one of the main areas there.
Love that. Well, I'll be adding the Ralph McTell version to the Spotify
yes.
playlist. But before I let you go, for anyone wanting to find out any more information about December Labs or contact your team, what's the best starting point?
Definitely our website. And one of the areas that I would definitely recommend, especially to non-technical founders, entrepreneurs, is our blog. We are really big on what we call democratizing knowledge. And it's really just informing you about all the beautiful things that, design thinking, UX, UI, technology has to offer. So you can get more informed. And whenever you are ready to talk to a developer, you know all the right questions to ask.
I love that. And I love how you're helping other non-technical founders out there. And your passion for design thinking and integrating cutting-edge technologies, it really shines through. But more than anything, just thank you for taking the time to share your story with me today.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Wow. I just cannot thank Elisabeth enough for covering such a variety of topics today, from UX research and design thinking, the benefits of prototyping, the wearable and smart device ecosystems, digital health, and how startups can build the right product in the right way. But I'm curious, did anything that we covered resonate with you? Did it inspire a little spark of creativity or some questions that you'd like to share with me? Or would you like to come on here and share your story? Whatever it is, remember, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn at Neil C. Hughes. And my website is techblogwriter.co.uk, where you'll find over 1,700 podcast interviews. So keep those messages coming in. If you do follow me on social media, don't just hit the follow button. Send a little request. Send a little note there. Say you listen to the podcast, where you listen, what you like, what you don't like, whatever. Please send it over. But that's it for today. So a big thank you. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.